review of the Samsung NX1. I have 3 points to share about this camera as we dive into this review. First is, it offers a really nice fun factor. It's a joy to use, and for me, that makes a difference when talking about different cameras. On top of that, you get awesome image quality, some of the best out of any crop sensor cameras I've seen to date. And finally, it offers some really nice cutting-edge technology that may be for better or worse, and we'll talk about that. So let's get into it. So I mentioned that 28 megapixel sensor. It is backside aluminum, the first backside illuminated, the first time that's been used in a sensor this large, and the image quality is very good. Very good. Video quality too. 15 frames a second in its burst rate. We'll talk more about that in a minute. A very capable autofocus system. I would say the best in any mirrorless I've seen to date that can nicely match that 15 frames per second. So as you're shooting, what's coming towards you stays in focus for the most part. 4K video internally capable in this $1,499 camera. There are very few other cameras that can do 4K that well in this price range, the GH4 being one of them, and we'll talk about how these two compare in a moment. And connectivity options, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, NFC, all combined to make this camera really easy to control remotely, get images off remotely to your PC, to a smartphone, all really works nicely. And it's built well. Magnesium alloy body underneath this polycarbonate and some weather sealing. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about what that means as well. So my highlighted features, the things that I really like about this camera, well, I did a whole nother video about the articulated touchscreen and its user interface. Feels fantastic, and I would expect something like that from Samsung. They know how to do touchscreens from all of their smartphone lineup, and they have applied most of that to this camera. When you look at touchscreens from recent Canon and Nikon cameras, they really start to feel dated, and basically it is the same screen that you can touch, whereas on this you can swipe down to pull down a different menu system, and I really appreciate that, and it just works really well. The auto ISO is fairly intelligent, meaning you can set it and then you can still adjust your exposure compensation. This is something that is showing up in more and more cameras, but it's nice and it works well here. I have no problem shooting on ISO in this camera because one, I can adjust that exposure compensation, and two, at those higher ISOs that it may hit sometimes, the image quality is still perfectly fine for my uses. And firmware updates. This camera's been out since November. This review I'm doing in March, November, December, January, February, March. 5 months, 3 firmware updates. Let's compare that with the 70D, which has been out for years. And we've got 0 firmware updates for it. Now you could argue that some of those NX1 firmware updates are to fix bugs, but they not only have fixed bugs, all of them have added functions and features, some of it quite significant, and it shows Samsung's willingness to continue to push this camera and give people who are using it what they want, and I appreciate that. 5D Mark III has had 3 firmware updates as well. One of those has basically been only bug fixes, and that camera has been out for over 2 years. So, you know, it's just an interesting compare and contrast versus kind of the old guys versus the new guys. Top screen LCD, oh, I skipped, USB charging. Now this is a little bit controversial, but because some people either love it or hate it. I like it. You can charge this camera. You can charge a battery right in this camera. The reason I like it is I can carry around one of those little USB battery bricks you use to charge up your cell phone. And I'm out shooting for the day and the battery starts to get low. Well, I can just plug it in while I'm eating lunch or while it's in my bag. It will not charge while you're using it, but it is nice to be able to charge on the go from one of those battery backups. If you buy the more expensive kit, you do get the battery grip, which comes with 2 batteries. And we'll talk a little bit more about battery life, but I like that USB charging. Top screen LCD. So it's funny how DSLR-like they have made this camera, or mirrored on a typical DSLR, in that even giving you a little top screen LCD. I appreciate that. It allows me to change settings and see at a quick glance what they are and what I need to change. The custom profiles and customization of this camera are very nice. Again, nothing really brand new here from many other cameras, but it's done well and the interface to do those is Connectivity I mentioned, fantastic. I enjoy that. I can email right from the back of this camera. It talks to my Wi-Fi. I just had to set that up once, and then I pull up a picture and say, I want to email that, and you can do that. I like that. That's nice. Does it make you a better photographer? Does it make the camera take better pictures? No, but that increases that fun factor that I was talking about. Keep in mind as we go through, and we're about to hit the drawbacks, because there are some, that it really depends on your use case for this camera, and it cuts across a huge swath of other cameras in offering that 15 frames per second like the 7D Mark II, offering 4K video like the GH4. So, your reasons, your needs are going to be very different from someone else's, and so some of these drawbacks may hit on yours, and some things like connectivity may not be interesting to you at all, or might be very interesting. And then finally, I want to put in there the integrated time lapse, which again, other cameras, even the GH4 has, but really appreciate you can choose to have it create a movie for you out of those individual frames it's shooting, or give you the individual frames for your own post-processing. I like that, and that's nice, and I appreciate it. Okay. There are some drawbacks to this camera. Now, the first one is fairly picky, and really it's just mine. I think some of you feel the same way out there, though. I've seen reports on other people trying to figure this out. There is no true, well, I should say, there is a back button autofocus. There's a little AF on button right back here that you can use to autofocus. It works, but you can't remove autofocus from the shutter. True back button focus allows you, a system allows you to do that. It's not here in the NX1 yet. Hopefully a future firmware upgrade will. There are ways to hold that AF button down and hold the shutter halfway down and it will not refocus, but that's a little clunky and I don't like that. H.265 support is limited. So this camera offers some cutting edge technology, including that new codec, which gives you really beautiful images and video at 4K with reasonable file size. But working with that H.265 right now is very difficult and almost really non-existent support. You need to convert ProRes or H.264 with some of the converters that are out there, and that takes some serious time. So if you're a professional looking to fit this into your workflow, you need to keep that in mind, that it may not be the best fit at this time. In a year, maybe be fine, but right now it's tricky. And if you're a parent that just wants to shoot video of your kid, again, if you're not going to be watching it off the camera, you're going to have a hard time watching it. Very few computers even support playback, let alone editing. So I've found that on my Mac, VLC will try to play it back. The frames I can see are gorgeous, but then it just kind of fails. And a lens ecosystem. We're going to come back and talk about this more in a second. I should add one more bullet point that I thought I put on there, and that is, for better or worse, they mirrored the DSLR-like style. And you ended up with a bunch of buttons over here, ISO, autofocus system, and you can remap some of those to the right-hand side, but it does mean that this camera becomes two-handed operation for some things. So you want to keep that in mind. I really like over here on the 7D Mark II and the 70D, you've got all the buttons you need. You put it in the right dial you want, and then everything is a right-handed or a one-handed operation. And the NX1 right now does require two hands. Let's talk about lenses. Here is a complete list of Samsung's NX mount lenses. Now, depending on where you're coming from, this list might look huge and fine, or it may look very limiting. Let's take the kit lenses off the list, and really we're just left with what you could buy after you bought an NX system with a kit lens. So we definitely have a decent amount of lenses. But the first big issue I notice, or you should notice if you're thinking about being a wildlife photographer or picking this camera up for wildlife or serious sports, is we don't have anything above 300. And in fact, the 300 isn't even technically out yet. It's just starting to come out. It is going to be a fantastic lens from early reports, but it is going to be an expensive lens, and it is just a 300mm lens. Above 300, we got no options right now. Will there be options soon? Not sure. So that's an issue. We also have, somewhat limiting on the prime side of things. We have a fair number, but we don't have any really fast primes, and crop sensor cameras do a little bit better with those faster, wider open primes to kind of mimic the full frame look of the primes that aren't as wide open. Again, depending on where you're coming from, this list might look fine. If you're a parent, you want to capture your kid, 50 to 200 it's going to be a fine lens. The 50 to 150 is going to be an excellent lens, and is an excellent lens. Would allow you to capture sports in lower light, and it's going to do very well. But there are some gaps in this lens list. We do have some third-party manufacturers, Rokinon, Bauer, Samyang. They are making kind of your wider prime lenses. They're manual focus only. They're manual aperture control as well. So they're really targeted at folks who are using this for video, and those are nice. One of the things that the GH4 has going for it, we'll come back to in a minute, is adapters that allow you to put lots and lots of other lenses on, like Canon lenses. On the NX side right now, because of the way that this camera is designed, there are no good smart adapters that I know of. I've been using this dumb adapter, this Fotodiox EOS to NX. A dumb adapter means no information is passed from lens to camera. You lose autofocus, you lose image stabilization if the lens has it because there's no way to get power to the lens. You lose aperture control. That is pretty limiting for a lot of people. Again, some serious videographers who are shooting in a situation where they don't need autofocus, it's not that bad. Put a manual focus, manual aperture lens on here and you're fine. But the other thing that I really don't like about this adapter is it doesn't feel very well made. It fits onto the NX just fine, but then putting EF lenses on, it is extremely tight. I feel like I need a pipe wrench to get them all the way around. In fact, I haven't fully latched any lens I've put on yet, simply because it just feels too tight before I even get to the latch point. So that's disappointing, and it's unclear to me whether or not there's going to be any real smart adapters that allow access to EF lenses anytime soon. Metabones, which I love for my GH4, has said that they will not, because of the flange distance in the design here, they will not be offering a speed booster. Whether or not they will be offering a normal adapter or just a normal smart adapter is unclear. It does not seem likely at this time. So that's an issue for some people. So we're looking at, oh, that's where I put the two-handed operation being an issue on this slide. And just wanted to bullet point those lens ecosystem issues. Limited selection, even more at the pro level, and a limited number of adapters. As I said, this camera cuts across many other cameras. I happen to have a 7D Mark II here and a GH4, and I think those are interesting cameras to compare it to because of kind of the class-leading APS-C size sensor, autofocus system, really sports and wildlife champ right now. Compare that against this class-leading mirrorless autofocus system in 15 frames per second. And then you've got the 4K. Let's compare it against the GH4, and we're going to run through these fairly quickly. Hang on to that slide. First one I'm going to show up is, well, when we're comparing cameras, we need to talk a little bit about image quality. I've spent a lot of the last few days carefully looking at side-by-side images from the NX1 and the 7D Mark II. And when I have to pick a winner, it is the NX1. It has better image quality, it's got more resolution, and it does better in low light. It is not an amazing difference or a jaw-dropping difference, but it is a difference and it is noticeable. In this case right here, this was at 6400 ISO, NX1 on the right, 7D Mark II on the left, and they've been resized so that they match. I give the NX1 a little bit of an advantage here, but really, again, not much. I'm going to put both lots of image samples and 4K video samples on my website. First link down below this video, take a look at that. All right, so image quality I give to the NX1. Focusing system. Well, we've got this, DSLR contrast detection system in here that is just fantastic in all situations. I've been continually impressed, and it is fast. When I was in Montana shooting, tigers running directly at me at the Animals of Montana photography trip, or McKay Photography Academy and Animals of Montana, just really impressed with good lenses, nails it every single time. NX1, very good for a mirrorless camera. I've been impressed by how close it is to the 7D Mark II in autofocusing. It does get a little confused, as these face detection systems do, in lower light situations and in flat or low contrast situations. So very good, but if I was going out to shoot wildlife, and we'll put the lens issue aside, in all kinds of conditions, the 7D Mark II still is a clear winner, so I'm going to give it to it there. Now, frames per second. 10 frames per second out of the 7D Mark II. Loud 10 frames per second. NX1, you've already heard, 15 frames per second. But that's not the whole story. So let's take a look at these waveforms real quick here. The top two are from the 7D Mark II, the bottom two are from the NX1. We've got raw JPEG in that order. Look at that top waveform. That's a 5-second period from the 7D Mark II. It goes for, about 3 seconds, maybe 3.5 seconds at that full 10 frames per second before you hit a buffer limit and a slowdown. And this was with a fast SD card. JPEG, it just happily shoots that whole time. The third line is the raw from the NX1. And you can see here that very quickly, you got 15 frames a second for just about 1.5 seconds, maybe 2 seconds, and then a very big gap, and then a very big gap before you got more shots. So that buffer could feel limiting. Now, again, this may or may not apply to you. There's very few people that need to shoot in situations where they're holding down the shutter button for 5 seconds. But even with the NX1, as you can see, you got that short period of time, and if you're trying to take multiple short bursts, you are going to hit that buffer limit, and with the 7D Mark II, you're not. JPEG side of things with the NX1, you can see that it very happily shoots fast all the way through those, but just off the frame, I noticed, because I do let it run a little bit longer than 5 seconds, but just then trim it down, that it did hit a little bit of a slowdown. So even with JPEGs at 5 seconds. Now that is a very small use case scenario, so we're not going to spend any more time talking about it. So the buffer could feel limiting to some. On the video side, one of the highlight features of the 7D Mark II is that it offers that AF servo mode. Canon was very happy to tell everybody about that. A lot of disappointment from some that there wasn't any touchscreen to access that dual pixel and nice smooth focusing that the 70D offers. But you know what? At 1080 and 60 frames per second, you have no AF servo mode. It is disabled on the 7D Mark II. It just can't do that. Compare and contrast that to the NX1. Not only do you have 4K video in here, gorgeous 4K video, but you can also shoot 1080 at 60 frames a second and at 120 frames a second. Now it does that slow down within camera. You still pick 60 frames a second and then you choose the half speed to get the 120, and then you can slow it down more in post-processing. But it does that with autofocus. It does audio still running. This is a spectacular option if you're looking to shoot slow-mo video. And we'll come back to how that compares with the slow-mo video in the GH4 in just a second. So really, very little compare and contrast, or very little win here from the 7D Mark II on the video side of things, other than you have access to the lenses. Lens selection, Canon, awesome, huge selection. NX1, you saw the list, it's fairly limiting. And now let's just hit these other points to keep this review from getting too long. The weather sealing is serious on the 7D Mark II, one of the most weather sealed cameras to date. The NX1, people are calling weather sealed. Samsung has used the term weather sealing, but their manual states that it is not dust proof, or yes, that it's not dust proof to avoid dusty environments. That's a little bit of a red flag to me, and I believe that the term weather sealing that we throw around really means not a whole lot on mini cameras, but I know the folks at lensrental.com have taken apart the 7D Mark II and were incredibly impressed with the weather sealing system in this camera, the gaskets, and they have looked at the insides of lots of other cameras and they don't quite approach that. So I'm impressed with this level, and I would be a little bit more wary about shooting in all kinds of conditions with this Samsung NX1. You know, I've been carrying this camera around for a while now, and like, gosh, you know, it's a pretty heavy mirrorless camera. And then I picked the 7D Mark II back up again after a while and said, oh, right, that's what a big DSLR feels like. The 7D Mark II is a beast. It is a heavy, serious camera, feels wonderful in the hand, and you get that awesome weather sealing. The NX1 is lighter. And when you take off a heavy lens like the 16-50 f2.8, you know, it's quite manageable. You put a nice little 30mm prime lens on here, I've mentioned a couple times, and you've got a really nice little system. So it is definitely lighter and less weight. As I said, we're going to just run through these fairly quickly to keep this review from getting too long. And on my website, I'll have 4K video samples at the different high at different ISOs versus the GH4. So we can set the 7D Mark II aside and now say, well, these are two cameras that can shoot 4K internally capable. There's very few in this price range that can do that without any add-ons. And of course, I said price range already. The video quality at the higher ISOs, surprisingly enough, the GH4 comes out on top. Go look at the video as the link is right down below yourself to see. I believe it has something to do with the compression from the H.265, because you would expect this bigger sensor, APS-C versus Micro Four Thirds, to do better, but at those higher ISOs it doesn't. Now, to be fair, those are ISOs where neither camera looks great, and I wouldn't really want to deliver video files to a client at those ISOs. And at the lower ISOs, the NX1, gorgeous. The quality is just really, really nice. And you do have to deal with that H.265, versus over here you've got a much easier workflow process, but very nice. Lens selection, well, you've got not only the Micro Four Thirds that will all mount natively, but you've got things like the Metabone Speed Booster adapter, which then allow you to use all kinds of Canon lenses and other lenses as well. So just a huge selection, even bigger than Canon, because you've got all of Canon's and all of the Micro Four Thirds with adapters. NX1 is limiting. Slow-mo, 96 frames per second, 120 frames per second, and a pretty clear difference in quality. The 96 frames per second on the GH4 does not look great. It's usable, but not great. Really nice over here on the NX1. Articulated screen, you know, I mentioned this as a highlight for the NX1. For photos, it's perfect. It's all I need. I'm happy with this type of articulating screen that doesn't flip out to the side. But for video work sometimes, especially if I'm off shooting a review on my own and I don't have anybody to help me, it's really nice to be able to flip the screen completely out to the side. So I give a slight nod here to the GH4, but it's close. Battery life, GH4 is fantastic battery life. NX1 isn't bad, but it certainly eats more battery. It's processing, it's working harder, especially shooting those higher quality 4K files at that H.265 compression rate. And connectivity, I left blank. Oh, and also video features. I've left both of those blank because it is a toss-up. There's parity between both of them. I think they're just about equal. It depends on what you specifically need if one comes out on top. I'm not going to talk about these other cameras other than to say the NX1, in a lot of cases, beats them quite handily in many of the ways that I've just covered. It beats the 7D Mark II and it beats the GH4. Nikon D7100 image quality is a little bit better than the 7D Mark II, but still, I put the NX1 on top. The D7200, I think these are very close. I haven't seen enough samples and haven't shot with myself with the D7200 yet to say. The Canon 70D up till now has been my go-to pick for the camera that parents just pick up and go for photos and videos. It's user-friendly, it's great quality, it's got that great autofocus system. If you're in that price range though, and you go a little bit more, the NX1 offers a lot to like, but then you're working with those H.265 files. Keep coming back. That is a roadblock right now for me to recommend this camera to your casual user who just wants to shoot some video and share it with friends. The Sony A7, A7 Mark II, A7S, those are full frame cameras, huge lens selection because you can use lots of adapters with them as well. You know, this camera offers lots to love, and for someone who is very serious about video and doesn't mind that extra workflow bump, which isn't a roadblock to somebody who's serious, then, you know, this camera is a really nice savings and image quality that goes up against those full frame cameras. And I didn't put it on the list, but I did shoot some side-by-sides with the 5D Mark III just to see. 5D Mark III and a full frame sensor is still cleaner than this crop sensor camera at those higher ISOs, but at the lower ISOs, the quality out of here is fantastic, and I'd be very happy to walk around and shoot with this lots. Now I've got a separate video that is just this. I'm going to breeze through this quickly. The NX500, some people are calling it an NX1 Mini. It's just starting to ship. It's very similar to that A6000, A5100 sized camera. People are calling it an NX Mini because it shares some of the same internal features. One thing I'd like to point out though is that the NX500 does have dual dials on the back that allow full manual control. It's fairly rare in cameras this size and nice. So why are they calling it an NX Mini? Because it shares that same sensor. It shares the same autofocusing system, that 205 phase detection points, which I have found to be very capable, but it does not share the same processor, and that create this difference between the two. So clear differences: $14.99 body only versus $800 with 16 to 50 kit lens. Not the same kit lens that's on here. That is a variable aperture 3.5/5.6. It's nothing to get excited about, but it's also not a bad lens. Weather sealed magnesium alloy body, polycarbonate body, clear size and weight difference. The NX1 offers 4K video. NX500 4K video is cropped additionally because of that slower sensor that it's using. We're up to a 2x or just over a 2x crop. That means a 30mm lens becomes just over a 60mm lens, and that is a pretty significant crop to keep in mind that may or may not be a deal breaker for the type of work that you're doing. 15 frames per second, 9 frames on the NX500, and an even smaller buffer. So we talked about hitting that buffer limit pretty quick. I don't think that's going to be a real issue for anybody picking up the NX500. You're not going to buy that to shoot crazy sports and things of that sort. So it's not an issue, but just keep in mind that it is not exactly the same as the NX1, even though they share many of the same internals. The bottom line of this NX1 camera: there are some reviews that I procrastinate doing for a variety of reasons. I'm a good procrastinator. I've really procrastinated in this review because if I didn't review it yet, I didn't have to send it back. I have enjoyed using this camera, and I would be very happy in a non-professional setting for this to be my camera. Why non-professional? Well, because as a professional, I need access to that big ecosystem of lenses and flashes, and Samsung just doesn't have that yet. But if I was just a parent, just want good pictures of my kids, doing fun things, great video quality, this is a lot to offer. I may wait a little bit for that H.265 support to grow, but it's fun. And I think it's for the person who is as much a photographer as they are technology enthusiasts. So they like to fiddle. They like to be able to connect their camera to Wi-Fi points wherever they are and email people right from the camera and say, I just emailed you this picture right from the camera. The performance is awesome. So it's neat that they've married this. You know, they didn't say, oh, here's this awesome technologically advanced camera with okay image quality. No, it has class-leading image quality and class-leading tech stuff. That's what we'll call it. The NX1 is very good tech stuff. But the ecosystem, as I mentioned, is limiting for some. If you appreciated this review, I'd take a moment and hit that thumbs up button. If you're not already a subscriber, please do that. Hitting that subscribe button is a powerful way to thank me for my time. And B&H makes many of my reviews possible, including this one. So if you were thinking about buying any of the cameras or gear I discussed today, I'd appreciate it if you used their links right down below this video. If you've got questions about this, you can leave a comment right down below. If you want to grow as a photographer, increase your skills in picture taking, post-processing, I would ask that you come over and be a Patreon supporter. That's where you pledge a few dollars a month to me, and you get instant value on your investment. You get access to my video library. You get access to me and other people in our awesome support group ready to help and answer your questions. And it is such a friendly group of people. I've been really happy with the tone in there. And I just invite you to take a look and think about pledging and supporting what we're doing here. Thanks so much for watching.